Hi, this is Mr. Eckert, and we're going to go through heredity target H8, which says that you should be able to explain inheritance in terms of complete dominance, incomplete dominance, codominance, and sex-linked traits. So first, complete dominance is if you've had heredity or genetics before, you probably learned complete dominance. It's also called simple dominance. And you're right, you might remember there are three possible genotypes. An individual can be homozygous dominant, heterozygous, or homozygous recessive. And with this inheritance type, there's only two possible phenotypes, either the dominant phenotype or the recessive phenotype. Both, as it says, both the homozygous dominant and the heterozygous genotypes will show the dominant phenotype, while only the homozygous recessive individuals will show the recessive phenotype. Now here's what that means. For example, if we look at flower color, you can see in the example at the top that's homozygous dominant, big R, big R. Let's say R stands for red, so that would be a red flower. In the middle, the heterozygous genotype, big R, little r, that would also be a red phenotype, but only the one at the bottom, lowercase r would show a yellow flower if lowercase r codes for yellow. Now in incomplete dominance, there is no real dominant allele that completely masks the other recessive allele. So as a result, when you have a heterozygous individual, the two alleles, whatever they code for, they kind of blend together to form a third phenotype. So in this, there's three genotypes: homozygous dominant, heterozygous, and homozygous recessive. But unlike in complete dominance, there are three phenotypes here. The dominant phenotype, a blend of the two alleles, and then the recessive phenotype. So it says since the dominant allele is not totally dominant, we use two different capital letters to symbolize and represent the different alleles. So again, if we go back to flower color, let's say big R is red, and now we're going to let big W, capital W, represent white. So an individual with the genotype big R would be a red flower. At the bottom, big W would be a white flower, but you can see in the middle, an individual with the genotype big R, big W would be a pink flower. So you can see it's neither red nor white, but a blend of the two, and that's how incomplete dominance works. Another type of inheritance pattern that's similar but works differently is something called codominance. The prefix co, you can see, means with or together. So in codominance, the two different alleles are both dominant in the sense that a heterozygous individual, both alleles, whatever they're coding for, will show up equally. They don't blend together. They both show up in whatever they're coding for. So again, three possible genotypes: the homozygous dominant, heterozygous, or homozygous recessive. Now, dominant and recessive really aren't don't mean the same thing here. The one allele, you can have two of the one allele, two of the other allele, or a mix of both. So there's definitely three possible phenotypes, though. The one allele, which we're going to say is dominant, the other allele, which we'll just say is recessive, and the mix of the two. And again, since both are dominant, we're going to use two capital letters, two different letters, both capital, to symbolize this type of inheritance pattern. So for example, if a capital R codes for red in cows and a capital W codes for white, a cow with the genotype big R would be red. At the bottom, you can see big W, it would be white. And in the middle, in a heterozygous individual with big R, big W, it would be something called roan. And you can see here that both the white allele is expressed, because you can see this cow has white hair, but the red allele is also expressed because it has red hairs as well. So it's not a blending of the two, both show up equally. Last, an inheritance pattern that works altogether differently is something called sex-linked trait. And sex-linked traits are any traits, or all traits, that are found on one or the other of the sex chromosomes. Remember, you humans have 46 chromosomes. 2 of those chromosomes code for sex. We symbolize those by X and Y. So any most all of our traits, of course, are found on those 44 chromosomes that are not sex chromosomes, but there are a few traits that are found on these sex chromosomes, and those are called sex-linked traits. You may remember from doing a karyotype that the X chromosome is actually bigger than the Y chromosome. It has more DNA. So most sex-linked traits are X-linked. They're found on the X chromosome rather than the Y. There are a few Y-linked traits, but we're going to look at all examples of X-linked, sex-linked traits. So when you write a sex-linked trait, and again we're going to focus on those that are X-linked, you actually have to write the symbol, the allele, for that particular trait on the X chromosome. We're still going to use capital and lowercase letters. Often the sex-linked traits that we'll look at are recessive sex-linked traits, but we have to put those physically on the X chromosome. So you can see down here at the bottom, color blindness is an example of sex-linked trait, and it's recessive. So we're going to let little c represent the color blindness, whereas capital C represents a normal vision or not colorblind individual. And you can see those are written directly on the X chromosome. So males, you'll remember, have a 1X and 1Y sex chromosome. There's only two possible genotypes then if we're looking at color blindness. A male could be X big CY, and that would be a normal vision male, or X little cy, and that would be a colorblind male. Females, you remember, have two X's, so there's three possible genotypes. A female could be X big C with normal vision. Heterozygous X big C, X little c, that would be a normal vision female as well, but she'd be a carrier. And X little c, and that'd be the only woman that would have color blindness. So since men only inherit the Y chromosome, they're XY, women are XX, all Y-linked sex-linked traits are shown in men only. There are none that, of course, occur in women. But both men and women get an X chromosome, so they can both inherit X-linked sex-linked traits. There's about 1,000 different X-linked traits, and some examples. We looked at color blindness. Hemophilia, which is a blood disorder that prevents blood from clotting, is another sex-linked trait found on the X chromosome. And Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a degenerative disease, causes the muscles to weaken over time, is also a sex-linked trait found on the X chromosome. About 1 in 12 men has color blindness. It can be partial, it says, or complete. And again, it's an X-linked or recessive trait. So you can see here, these are the diagrams that are used to test someone to see if they have color blindness. So if you look at the top left diagram, you clearly see, you should see the number 25. Then if you look at the others, you should see other numbers should jump out at you. If you have trouble seeing any of those, that could indicate that you have color blindness or maybe some form of color blindness, and you should probably have your eyesight tested further by an optometrist. Hemophilia is, again, a blood disorder. There's two types, A and B hemophilia. Both of them, the individual lacks clotting factors, and so their blood doesn't clot. It says there's about 20,000 hemophilia patients in the U.S., and about 85% of those have hemophilia A. And these individuals now can take drugs which actually make their blood clot. Duchenne muscular dystrophy, again, is a progressive muscular disease. It starts in the lower body, eventually affects the whole body. It says symptoms usually appear before age 6 and can appear as early as infancy, but by the age 10, most individuals need some kind of bracing of their lower limbs to help them walk. And usually by the time they reach puberty or shortly before, they're no longer able to walk and have to be confined to a wheelchair. You can see this occurs about 2 out of every 10,000 people. Treatment, it says, is basically aimed at controlling symptoms because there is no cure for this. So if a person is inactive or doesn't exercise, then the disease seems to progress more quickly. So that's encouraged, and physical therapy is then also helpful to help the muscles maintain their strength as long as possible. And this is just a diagram showing the major muscles that are affected by muscular dystrophy, and you can see here a photograph of a couple of individuals that have muscular dystrophy. And of course, you may remember Jerry Lewis used to have a telethon on Labor Day that was aimed at raising money for muscular dystrophy. So that's it for this target. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in class or sign up for help.